I met Ethan on a Tuesday evening that felt unfinished, like the day hadn't decided what it wanted to be yet. The sky was pale, holding on to light longer than it should have, and the city hummed softly beneath it. I was standing in line at a small used bookstore, holding a novel I didn't really want, when he leaned over and said, almost apologetically, "That one will break your heart." But in a good way. I looked at him, surprised by the honesty in his voice. He wasn't smiling to impress me. He was just open. Like he expected the world to answer him kindly. We started talking between shelves that smelled like paper and dust and time. He told me he worked with sound, restoring old recordings, voices from decades ago. I told him I painted when I was younger, before life convinced me it was impractical. He didn't try to fix that. He just said, "That's a shame. The world needs people who notice colors." When we walked outside together, it felt natural, like we'd already agreed to keep going. We grabbed coffee even though neither of us needed it. We talked until the cafe closed, then sat on the curb, legs almost touching, sharing stories we usually saved for people we trusted. He told me about losing his father young. I told him about my fear of being forgotten. There was no awkwardness, only pauses that felt safe. Falling in love with Ethan wasn't loud. It was slow mornings and late nights. It was the way he reached for my hand without looking, already knowing where it would be. It was the way he listened, not to reply, but to understand. He remembered small things, how I hated cucumbers, how I always doubted myself before good things happened. Sometimes we'd lie on his apartment floor, music playing softly, the city glowing through the windows. He'd trace invisible patterns on my wrist and say, "Do you ever think about how fragile this is?" Not in fear. In reverence. "I think about it all the time," I'd answer. "That's why I want it." He made me feel seen in a way that was almost unbearable, like standing too close to a fire. With him, I didn't have to perform happiness. I could be quiet. I could be unsure. I could be real. One night, as rain tapped gently against the glass, I rested my head on his chest and realized something terrified me. I wasn't bracing for the end. I wasn't holding back pieces of myself. I had given them freely. When we fell, it wasn't accidental. It was a choice we made every day. And I had no idea how much that choice would cost us. I didn't wake up one morning broken. That would have been easier to explain. What happened to me was quieter, more dishonest. I began to disappear in pieces so small no one could point to the exact moment it started. At first, it was exhaustion. The kind that sleep doesn't touch. I'd wake up already tired, like I had spent the night running from something I couldn't remember. Ethan would kiss my forehead and say, "You didn't even dream, did you?" I'd shake my head, smiling, pretending it was nothing. Then the colors faded. Not literally, but emotionally. The city lost its edge. Music sounded flatter. Conversations required effort, like wading through water. I laughed when I was supposed to. I said I'm fine because it was easier than explaining the truth, that I felt dimmer, like a light slowly turning down inside me. Ethan noticed before I was ready to admit it. "You're not here," he said one night as we sat across from each other, dinner untouched. His voice wasn't accusing. It was scared. "I can see you, but I can't reach you." "I'm right here," I insisted, but even as I said it, the words felt thin. I started forgetting things, small things at first. Where I put my phone. What day it was. Then bigger things. Conversations we'd already had. Plans we'd already made. Ethan would gently remind me, never raising his voice, but I could see the fear growing behind his eyes. Doctors gave us polite answers. Stress. Anxiety. Burnout. They handed me pamphlets and told me to rest. I wanted to scream at them that rest wasn't the problem. I was resting too much, retreating inward, curling away from the world, from Ethan. Some days I couldn't feel love the way I used to. That terrified me more than anything. I still knew I loved him, but it felt distant, like a memory instead of a living thing. I watched him from across the room and wondered when I had started standing so far away from myself. The turning point came one evening when he reached for my hand and I flinched. Not because of pain. Because I didn't recognize the sensation. His face fell in a way I will never forget. Not anger. Not disappointment. Grief. "I'm losing you," he said quietly. "Tell me how to stay." I opened my mouth, desperate to reassure him, but nothing came out. The silence between us stretched, heavy and unforgiving. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just happening to me. It was happening to us. And I didn't know how to stop it. Ethan didn't leave. That was the cruelest part. If he had walked away, slammed a door, given me something sharp to hold on to, maybe the pain would have made sense. Instead, he stayed, and slowly became someone I barely recognized. He grew quieter, but not distant in the way people warn you about. He was still there every morning, still making coffee the way I liked it, still asking if I slept. But his eyes changed. They carried a constant vigilance, like he was bracing for impact that never came and always came at the same time. I'd catch him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. Studying my face as if it were a language he was desperate to relearn. Sometimes he'd ask questions that felt too careful. "Do you remember how we met? Do you still like this song? Does this feel familiar?" I could hear the unspoken question behind all of them. "Do you still feel like you?" At night, when he thought I was asleep, he'd sit on the edge of the bed scrolling endlessly on his phone. Medical forums. Personal stories. Late-night searches that had no clear answers. I wanted to tell him to stop, to rest, to save himself, but I was afraid that if he stopped fighting, I'd vanish completely. He started carrying the weight alone. Friends noticed. They told me he looked thinner, sharper around the edges. He stopped laughing the way he used to. When he smiled, it felt rehearsed. Love hadn't left him, it had cornered him, demanded more than he knew how to give. One evening, I heard him in the kitchen, speaking softly into the dark. "I'm still here," he said, voice breaking. "I'm not going anywhere. I don't care how long this takes." I stood frozen in the hallway, my chest aching with something dangerously close to guilt. I was the one fading, yet he was the one unraveling. He never blamed me. Not once. But his silence spoke louder than anger ever could. It said I'm scared. It said I don't know how to save you. It said I will destroy myself trying. When I reached for him, he held me like someone holding on to a memory mid-erasure. Too tight. Too careful. As if letting go, even for a second, might be the moment I disappeared for good. And somewhere deep inside, a thought began to form, quiet and terrifying. What if loving me was costing him everything? The truth didn't arrive all at once. It crept in, fragmented, hidden behind half-answers and uncomfortable pauses. I sensed it before I understood it, the way Ethan's focus sharpened into something almost obsessive, the way his fear transformed into intention. He started asking different questions. Not "how are you feeling?" But "when did this start?" Not "what do you need?" But "who did you talk to before this happened?" I watched him piece together my life like a timeline laid out on a cold table. Doctor visits. The job I left suddenly. The experimental treatment I'd agreed to months ago when I was desperate to feel normal again. I had signed forms I barely read. Trusted smiles that promised relief. One night, he sat across from me, papers spread between us, his hands trembling. "They didn't tell you everything," he said. His voice was low, controlled, dangerously calm. "They knew this could happen." I tried to remember the appointment. The white walls. The reassuring tone. The way they said side effects are rare. My chest tightened as fragments clicked into place. "They said it was safe," I whispered. "They said it was profitable," he replied. What had been taken from me wasn't just health. It was agency. Time. The ability to feel myself fully. Ethan uncovered complaint reports buried in legal language, testimonies dismissed as coincidence. People like me, quietly erased, slowly dimmed. I saw something change in him then. Not rage exactly. Resolution. He stopped hesitating. Stopped asking permission. He filed reports, made calls, pushed doors that didn't want to open. He stayed up nights documenting everything, his exhaustion fueled by something relentless. "I won't let this be the end of you," he said once, gripping my hands like an oath. "Not like this." I was afraid, not of what had happened to me, but of what it was turning him into. Love had crossed a line inside him. It had become action. Consequence. Sacrifice. When the letter finally came, confirmation, acknowledgement, an apology dressed up as legality, I felt hollow relief. Validation didn't restore what I'd lost. But Ethan read it like a beginning. "We can still fight," he said. "This isn't over." And I realized then, whatever was taken from me had given him something else entirely. A purpose he wouldn't survive unchanged. Ethan used to move through the world gently. He avoided conflict, chose kindness even when it cost him convenience. I loved that about him, the softness, the patience, the way he believed most people meant well. That man didn't disappear completely, but he was reshaped by what we went through, bent into someone harder, sharper at the edges. Love did that to him. He learned how to argue with professionals who spoke in polished lies. How to sit in rooms where sympathy was performative and persistence was punished. He learned how to carry anger without letting it consume him, how to aim it. There were nights he came home exhausted, shoulders tense, eyes burning with a quiet fury he never released on me. "This shouldn't have been allowed," he'd say, more to himself than to me. Any of it. It cost him things. Sleep. Friends who didn't know how to stay. Pieces of the future he once imagined so casually. He stopped talking about someday and started living in now, as if planning ahead was a luxury we no longer deserved. And yet, there was beauty in what he became. He was more present than ever. Every moment with me felt intentional, cherished. He listened with a depth that bordered on reverence, like each word might be the last version of me he'd ever hear. When I had good days, he celebrated them quietly, afraid that too much joy might jinx us. When I had bad days, he carried them without complaint. Sometimes I'd catch him in the mirror, staring at his own reflection like he didn't fully recognize the man looking back. Love had aged him, yes, but it had also revealed him. Strength born not from confidence, but from refusal. "I didn't choose this," he admitted once, voice raw. "But I choose you. Every time." That was the cost. Choice after choice after choice. No guarantee of reward. No promise of healing. Just devotion in its most demanding form. I knew then that even if I never fully returned to who I was, even if parts of me stayed lost forever, Ethan had crossed a line that couldn't be undone. Love had changed his moral gravity. He would never again look away from suffering, not mine, not anyone's. He had become someone forged by love and marked by it. And I wondered, with aching clarity, whether anyone ever survives that transformation untouched. I don't believe love is meant to save us. I believed that once, back when my hands were steady and my future felt like a wide, open road. Now I think love does something quieter, braver. It stays. Even when staying hurts. I am not the woman Ethan fell in love with. Not completely. Some days I feel almost whole, like my old self is just around the corner, waiting to step back in. Other days, I drift, half present, stitched together by effort and patience. We stopped measuring progress the way doctors do. We measure it in moments. In mornings where I wake up and know his name without searching for it. In afternoons where laughter comes easily, unforced. In nights where silence doesn't feel like loss. Ethan never asks me to go back to who I was. He learned that lesson the hard way. Instead, he meets me where I am every single day. That kind of love isn't poetic in the way movies sell it. It's repetitive. Exhausting. sacred. There are scars on both of us now. Mine are invisible, living somewhere between memory and sensation. His are etched into his posture, the way he flinches at uncertainty, the way he prepares for loss even in happiness. Love didn't protect us from pain. It taught us how to carry it. Sometimes I watch him sleep and think about the life we almost had, the ease of it, the simplicity. I mourn that version of us. And then I look at what remains. At what we chose to become instead. Love, I've learned, is not the absence of suffering. It is the decision to remain open in its presence. If there is beauty in pain, it's not because pain is good. It's because love refuses to disappear when things fall apart. We are still here. Changed. Bruised. Real. And if this is where love hurts, then this is also where it proves it was real all along.